Stamp pattern stamp. Hi guys, today we'll talk about the stamp tool. Like the magic wand, it is one of the oldest Photoshop tools, but it hasn't lost its relevance to this day. The stamp tool allows you to clone some part of the image and move it to another place. That is, we'll take some kind of reference sample and put it in other place. So, let's get started. Here we have the stamp tool. This is also a pattern stamp tool next to it. We'll also talk about it today, but for now we'll just choose a stamp, and in the top menu you see settings that are very similar to the brush settings. We'll not dwell on them particularly, because it should already be clear to you. And now we'll try to take this bead and make a copy of it. Let's put the cursor over the bead. Now I'm holding down Alt on the keyboard. I have a target icon, and I click with the left mouse button. The sample is taken. Now I have this bead as a sample. Well, for example, I will place it somewhere here. Let's try to do it again. Let's choose another one, smaller this time. I reduce the size of the brush using square brackets, so that the brush matches the size of the bead. Well, probably in this way. I press Alt, the target icon appears, and without releasing Alt, I click with the left mouse button. And now I have another bead. Probably the question may arise: what is the difference between a stamp and the healing brush tool, which we studied before? Let's try to compare. So I take the healing brush tool, set the right size, press Alt, click and take the sample. And let's click it somewhere nearby. And look what the difference is. When we use a brush, the pixels that we copied adjust to the image that is below, trying to match the background as much as possible. With the help of a stamp, we simply transfer some fragment from one place to another. Let's see how this can be useful on the example of retouching. So I have a girl like this, and let's try to fix skin defects using the stamp tool and the brush, and compare the result. Let's take a spot healing brush tool and try to remove this element here. And I try not to catch the hair. Everything is fair. And look, if I have some area nearby that is quite different, then the elements of this area can get to the place where I just clicked with the brush. And let's try to remove the same defect using the stamp tool. I take the stamp, reducing the size of the brush of course. And now I will take a skin sample nearby. Let's take it here. I press Alt. I click. I transfer this piece to the place I need. And click again. And as you can see, everything has been cleaned up. I have used soft brush. So we choose a soft brush and select the appropriate area. Press the Alt key and click on the defect that we want to fix. It is much better this time. You can click on couple more times to completely remove traces of this defect. Of course, when you do retouching, you periodically change these tools and select the one that is most suitable for you at the moment, because in some cases the brush works better and in some cases the stamp works better. The principle of operation of this tool is very simple, but don't forget to do all the actions related to it on the new layer, because in this case you can firstly adjust the transparency, which is especially important if, for example, you are trying to remove wrinkles with a stamp. After all, some trace of them shouldn't be removed. And also, if you decide to bring something back after all, you can use an eraser. Also, you can erase some results of your actions. And now let's move on to the pattern stamp tool. It is located in the same place. And this is really a very interesting tool, because it allows to fill the area of our image with various textures. By default, Photoshop already offers us a certain number of textures. It is located here. You can look at them. We'll also consider it a little bit now. If these textures are not enough for you, you can click on this gear and upload some more textures. Well, for example, nature patterns, and added them to the textures that we already have. And now I have the nature patterns that we have just talked about. Of course, we'll try to use these textures and see how it works. But first let's try to create our own texture. For example, if you look at our image, you can see that there are such disheveled hairs, and let's assume that we would like to remove them. How can we do this? Well, of course, we can use the clone stamp tool as well, but in some cases it is not convenient and maybe even long. Therefore, we do this. We take a tool, a rectangular selection, and draw a certain area. You can draw the square by holding down the shift. Created. This will be the blank of our texture. Then we go into Edit menu and select Define Pattern. We can give a name to this pattern. OK, go to the Pattern Stamp tool. There we have all the patterns. And the most recent pattern is exactly the same pattern that we have created. Let's choose it. Using Ctrl+D. I have already removed the selection that we created before. And let's try to draw with our pattern. Look, I just swipe with a brush and it draws the same pattern that we created. And this is very convenient, because we can now just paint overall the unnecessary hairs with this pattern. We can clean it up everywhere, as much as we need it. In order to do this more efficiently, you'll have to create a few more patterns, because there are more darkened areas on the girl's neck, and there are lighter areas. But I think that the basic idea is clear to you. And let's compare a pattern stamp with a brush. The difference is the same as between a regular stamp and a healing brush tool. That is, let's say we take some texture. Let's take this one as an example. If we draw this texture with a pattern stamp tool, then the texture completely overlaps what we have below. And let's say we take the healing brush tool and try to use it for the same purpose. We will choose the same pattern. Then see what happens. The pattern is adapted to the pattern that is below. With the help of a healing brush tool and a pattern stamp, you can fill in the necessary areas with textures when you make a collage. For example, you can create a grass texture and fill it with some space where it should be. Or you can apply the texture directly to the image to achieve some special effects. Let's create a new clean layer. Now I'm going to take a pattern stamp and let's choose some texture. Well, for example, I will now choose this texture, and on the new layer I will reduce the opacity. My brush is soft. And let's try to change the makeup of the girl a little. Look, I swipe with the pattern stamp and immediately I have such an interesting gloss. Just like that, you can reduce it a little more. Well, so that it looks more or less realistic. You can also change the opacity of the stamp itself, like that. In addition, you can, for example, edit a canvas texture to your image. We also come here. Choosing a texture, I will make the bigger size. And look, I am adding a texture that looks like a canvas texture. But in order for me to have all this more or less well, we can change the blending mode and reduce the opacity. And that's the texture. I have disabled the visibility of the layer with texture. And let's once again use this texture to edit an effect like this. We change the blending mode to a soft light, changing the transparency, and we get these golden glares. A thinner brush can draw individual strands if necessary. Let's add such a golden shine to them. If we have something superfluous here, then of course with the help of an eraser you can fix it all and erase it so that there are no unnecessary things for us already, and there are only those that we want to see. Back to the stamp. Let's immediately reduce its opacity. I click on the eye icon. That's what we had before, and that's what we have now. You can still come up with a lot of possibilities for using this wonderful tool. But let's move on to the homework. So the first homework task will be to take a portrait of this girl and make a retouch, using all the tools you already know, the way you like it. And the second task will be to practice to use a pattern stamp on the portrait of this girl and try to make it more expressive. And that's all for today. It was Peter Romanov and AIM School. See you next time.